Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
My husband and I travel constantly for work. We're consultants for a tech firm, which sounds fancier than it is. Really, it just means we spend half our lives in airports and hotel rooms. After years of this routine, we developed our system. We always book seats together at the back of the plane. Some people hate the back, but we love it. Less crowded, closer to the bathrooms, and we can usually deplane without the aggressive shoving that happens up front. This trip was to a client site in Denver. Our alarm went off at 3 in the morning, which is an ungodly hour for anyone. I stumbled around the house like a zombie, threw some clothes in my suitcase, and we headed out into the dark. The drive to the airport was quiet. My husband drove while I dozed in the passenger seat, never quite falling asleep, but never fully awake either. That foggy, irritable state where everything feels slightly wrong. By the time we parked and made it through security, I was running on fumes and desperately hoping I could sleep on the plane. We boarded in the last group since we were sitting in the back anyway. I was already mentally checked out thinking about the coffee I'd grab once we landed. Then I saw them. A woman and her son were sitting in our seats. The kid looked about 11 or 12, hunched over his phone with earbuds in. The woman was also glued to her screen, scrolling through something with complete focus. Neither of them even looked up when we approached. I felt that familiar dread rising in my chest. The part of me that hates confrontation wanted to just find different seats and avoid the awkwardness. But my husband had gone to grab us water, and these were the seats we'd paid extra for. I took a breath. I politely told her that I believed she was in our seats. The woman looked up with this practiced smile. You know the type. The kind of smile that's meant to disarm you, to make you feel like you're being unreasonable for even bringing something up. She explained that they weren't seated together originally, so a flight attendant had told them they could sit here. That made no sense. Flight attendants don't just randomly reassign paid seats, but she said it with such confidence that for a second, I doubted myself. Maybe I'd made a mistake? No. I checked my boarding pass again. These were definitely our seats. I apologized, but explained that we had paid for these seats and would like to sit here. Her smile stayed fixed, but her eyes hardened just a touch. She pointed out that there were other empty seats behind us and asked if we would mind sitting in one of those instead. She mentioned they were already settled and comfortable, then questioned whether it really mattered. Something clicked in my brain. This wasn't a misunderstanding. She knew exactly what she was doing. She'd taken our seats, hoping we'd be too polite or too tired to push back. And you know what? Normally, she would have been right. Normally, I would have mumbled an apology and shuffled to different seats. But I was exhausted, cranky, running on 3 hours of sleep and airport coffee. And suddenly, I was just done being a doormat. I told her yes, it did matter. I explained that the plane was still boarding, so those seats might be reserved, and it really messed with the system if people sat in random seats. I could see her recalculating. She hadn't expected resistance. She said that if there weren't seats available after the plane finished boarding, they would move then. The sheer entitlement was breathtaking. She was literally telling me to stand in the aisle, blocking other passengers, while we waited to see if maybe possibly she might move. The old me would have caved, but the sleep-deprived, fed-up me, different story. I apologized again but said I just wanted to sit down. I told her I didn't want to stand in the aisle blocking people while we waited to see if there might be empty seats. I reminded her that I had paid for our seats and would like to sit in them. I paused. Then something possessed me. Maybe it was delirium. Maybe it was years of pent-up frustration finally bubbling over. Whatever it was, I smiled sweetly and added something else. I mentioned that besides everything else, I would like the police to be able to identify our bodies by seat number in case the plane crashed and our families wanted to bury our remains. The kid's head whipped up from his phone so fast. His eyes went huge, darting between me and his mother. The woman's mouth fell open slightly. She just sat there frozen, clearly not expecting that level of morbid practicality. The silence stretched. Other passengers were backing up behind me in the aisle, waiting. The woman's face went through several expressions: shock, irritation, calculation, then finally, resignation. Without a word, she started gathering her things. She nudged her son, who reluctantly pulled out his earbuds and grabbed his backpack. They shuffled past me into the aisle, and I kept that sweet smile plastered on my face the entire time. I thanked her warmly. I slid into my window seat just when my husband came back with a flight attendant trailing behind him. He'd gone to get help, bless him. I told them everything was fine now and that the woman and her son had moved. The flight attendant nodded and moved on to help other passengers. My husband settled in beside me, raising an eyebrow. He asked what had happened. I filled him in on the whole exchange, including my plane crash comment. He burst out laughing, not even trying to keep his voice down. I'm pretty sure the woman could hear us from wherever she'd ended up sitting. That made it even better. For the entire 3-hour flight, I could feel eyes boring into the back of my head. I didn't turn around once, just enjoyed my paid-for seat, dozed a little, and felt oddly proud of myself. When we landed, I caught a glimpse of her in the terminal. She was on her phone, gesturing angrily while talking to someone, probably complaining about the unreasonable woman who wouldn't give up her seat. I smiled to myself and kept walking. I used to think my life was pretty straightforward. I was a teacher, loved my job, and adored my students. Every day felt like an adventure. Then everything changed when I found that lump. I was getting ready for work one morning, rushing through my usual routine. When I was showering, my hand brushed against something unfamiliar. My heart stopped. I knew deep down what it might be, but I tried to convince myself it was nothing. I couldn't ignore it though. The next day, I went to see a doctor. The words breast cancer hit me like a truck. My world crumbled. How could this happen to me? I was only 43, healthy, active. It didn't make sense. The following weeks were a blur of tests, consultations, and difficult decisions. I had to leave my job, my students. It broke my heart, but I needed to focus on my health. Living in a developing country, our healthcare system isn't the best, but I was fortunate to find a decent oncology clinic. That's where my new routine began. Regular visits for chemotherapy became my new normal. It was tough. The side effects were brutal. I lost my hair, felt constantly nauseous, and was so tired all the time. But I found strength in unexpected places. The other patients at the clinic became like family. We supported each other through the hard days, celebrated the small victories. The medical staff, despite being overworked and underpaid, always had a kind word or a gentle touch. It wasn't ideal, but we made the best of it. One day, I was sitting in the chemotherapy room, hooked up to the intravenous line. The familiar beeping of machines and hushed conversations filled the air. I was chatting with the elderly man next to me about our favorite television shows when suddenly the door burst open. A woman stormed in. She looked around wildly, then walked up to the nurse's station and demanded to see a doctor right now. The nurse asked her to lower her voice and reminded her that this was a treatment area. She asked how she could help. The woman said she'd been waiting for hours and that her toe hurt. She insisted someone needed to look at it immediately. I was stunned by what I was hearing. A toe? In the oncology ward. The nurse apologized but explained that this was the chemotherapy room for oncology patients. She said if the woman needed to see a doctor for her toe, she'd need to go to the general outpatient department. The woman said she didn't care and that she'd been waiting too long already. She repeated that someone needed to see her now. The noise was getting louder. I could see other patients starting to look uncomfortable. The elderly man next to me was trying to cover his ears with his frail hands. Just then, the oncologist walked in. She took in the scene and approached the angry woman, asking what the problem was. The woman seemed relieved to finally see a doctor. She complained that her toe had been hurting for days and no one would help her. The doctor said she understood the woman was in pain, but this was a specialized ward for cancer patients. She explained they weren't equipped to handle general medical issues there. She offered to direct her to the right department. The woman refused. She said she wasn't going anywhere else. She pointed out that the doctor was a doctor and demanded she look at her toe. The woman actually sat down and started taking off her shoe. Looking around, I saw the distress on the faces of my fellow patients. Some were too weak to even lift their heads, but their eyes showed their discomfort. Then I felt the need to say something. My voice was weak from the treatment, but I managed to get her attention. I told her I didn't think she understood where she was. I explained that everyone in this room was fighting for their lives and that we were here for chemotherapy, which made us feel horrible. I said we needed peace and quiet and that her toe could wait. I asked her to please go to the right department. The woman snapped at me to mind my own business. She added that I didn't look that sick to her. That stung. She had no idea what I was going through, what any of us were going through. Another patient spoke up, an older woman who became like a mother to me. She told the angry woman to have some respect and that we were all suffering here. She pointed out that if she could walk and shout like that, she could go to the proper department. The woman asked how we dared speak to her that way. She demanded to know if we knew who she was. She threatened to have us all fired. The doctor said she was going to have to ask her to leave now because she was disturbing the patients. The woman said she wasn't going anywhere until someone looked at her toe. She was screaming now. The doctor looked at the nurse and nodded. The nurse left the room quickly. The doctor gave her a last warning to leave now or she'd be forced to call security. The woman told her to go ahead and call them. She said she'd sue the whole hospital. A few minutes later, 2 security guards entered the room and told her she needed to come with them. The woman shouted at them not to touch her and that she had rights. She tried to run, but in her anger, she'd forgotten she'd taken off her shoe. She tripped and fell face first onto the floor. The guards didn't waste any time. They picked her up, none too gently, and started dragging her out of the department. The woman screamed that they should let her go and that she'd sue us all. She yelled that we hadn't heard the last of her. Her shouts faded when they took her away. We all sat in stunned silence for a moment. The doctor apologized for what had happened and asked if we were all okay. There were murmurs of assent. The doctor went around checking on each patient individually. When she got to me, she squeezed my hand and thanked me for speaking up. She said I shouldn't have had to do that. I told her I couldn't just sit there and let her disrupt everything. I said we all had enough to deal with. The doctor agreed. She promised to speak with the hospital administration about improving their security measures and said this shouldn't happen again. The rest of the session was quieter than usual. We were all processing what had happened. When I was leaving, the nurse stopped me. She told me that the police came and that they didn't take kindly to people causing trouble in hospitals. She said the last she saw they were dragging that woman out to the police car and that she was still yelling about her toe. The next time I came for treatment, things had changed. There was a security guard stationed outside the oncology ward. The receptionist told me they'd implemented new protocols to screen non-patients before they could enter treatment areas. Life went on. Chemo was still hard, but I kept fighting. The support of my family, fellow patients, and the medical staff made all the difference. I've worked in the service industry for about 3 years now, so I know how tough the job can be. That experience made me protective of anyone trying to earn a living by serving people. When I see someone getting hassled while they're just doing their job, it gets under my skin. So when my group of friends decided to celebrate my buddy Winston's birthday at his favorite restaurant, I was looking forward to a nice, drama-free evening. That's not exactly what we got. There were 8 of us total that night. We'd all cleared our schedules to make sure we could be there for Winston. He'd been talking about this restaurant for weeks, going on about their steaks and how they made the best loaded potatoes he'd ever tasted. We were all pumped to have a good time and give him a birthday to remember. When we walked in, the hostess led us to a large table near the back of the dining room. Right next to us was a smaller table with about 5 or 6 guys who looked like they'd just rolled out of a college party. Backwards caps, tank tops that showed off their gym muscles, the works. They had that loud, obnoxious energy that told you they thought they owned the place. At first, I figured they'd settle down once they got some food in them. I was wrong. These guys were being terrible to their server from the moment we sat down. They were snapping their fingers at her, making ridiculous demands, and talking over her every time she tried to explain something. I could see the strain on her face even from where I was sitting. My jaw was already clenching, and we hadn't even ordered yet. After a few minutes, that same server made her way over to our table. Up close, I could see she looked frazzled. Her eyes were tired, and she had this tense smile that servers get when they're holding everything together by a thread. She apologized for the wait and explained that she had a lot on her plate right now. Her voice was shaky and stressed. I felt bad for her. None of this was her fault, and here she was apologizing to us. I told her not to worry about it and to take her time. The others at our table chimed in with similar reassurances. She looked relieved and took our drink orders before heading back to deal with the nightmare table next to us. We just started looking at our menus when the yelling started. One of the guys at the other table was getting loud about wanting an alcoholic drink. The server was trying to explain something to him, but he kept talking over her. We didn't hear everything, but we caught enough to understand what was happening. The server apologized but said she couldn't accept a screenshot. Her voice was patient but strained. The guy was waving his phone around like it was some kind of magic solution. He didn't have his physical identification card with him and thought a photo of it would work. The server was trying to stay professional, but you could hear the stress creeping into her voice. Then one of his buddies decided to be a hero. He announced loudly that he would buy the drink for his friend instead. The server took a deep breath. I could tell she was gathering her patience. She apologized again but explained that she couldn't do that because it was illegal and she could get in big trouble. That set the whole table off like a match to gasoline. They were all yelling at once, calling her unreasonable, acting like she'd personally insulted them. The server looked like she was about to cry. She mumbled something about getting her manager and fled from the table. I watched her go and saw her wipe at her eyes as she disappeared into the kitchen. Winston was not having it. His face was red, and he started pushing his chair back. He said he was going to say something to those jerks. His girlfriend grabbed his arm and pulled him back down into his seat. She gave him this look that said now wasn't the time. That's when our friend DJ got this look on his face. I've known DJ for about 10 years, and I recognized that expression. He was planning something. DJ said he had a better idea, and we all looked at him. He leaned back in his chair and patted his stomach, then announced that he had to fart. I grinned. I knew exactly where his mind was going, and honestly, it was brilliant. I told him that I also had to fart. DJ asked if we were going to crop dust this table, and I confirmed that I thought we were. For those who don't know, crop dusting is when you walk past someone and let one rip as you go by. The restaurant layout was perfect for it. To get to the bathroom, you had to walk past the problem table, and you could approach from either the left or the right side. It was like the universe had set up the perfect opportunity for petty revenge. DJ stood up first, making a show of excusing himself to use the restroom. He walked past the left side of their table and disappeared around the corner. A few seconds later, we heard the reaction. At first, they thought it was hilarious. They were laughing and pointing at one guy, giving him grief about it. That guy was getting angry, insisting it wasn't him. The denial only made his friends laugh harder. I waited another minute, then stood up. I took the right side path this time, passing their table from the opposite direction. When I rounded the corner, there was DJ, leaning against the wall with the biggest grin on his face. We gave each other a silent high five and just listened. The second wave hit them while they were still arguing about the first one. This time they weren't laughing. The accusations were flying. Everyone was blaming everyone else. Voices were getting raised. It was chaos, and DJ and I were standing around the corner trying not to lose it. That's when the manager finally showed up. We didn't see him, but we could hear every word. He told the gentleman that he was going to have to ask them to keep it down, and if they couldn't calm themselves, they would have to leave. The guys started complaining about their server. They were trying to make it sound like she was the problem, like they were the victims in all this. The manager just listened quietly. When they finally stopped talking, there was this long pause. When the manager spoke again, his voice was calm but firm. He explained the law about serving alcohol to minors and how the restaurant could lose its license if they violated it. Then he dropped the hammer. Because a second guy had openly said he'd buy alcohol for someone who couldn't prove they were of legal age, the manager couldn't serve any alcohol to their entire table. They couldn't verify everyone was over 21, so nobody was getting drinks. Period. You could have heard a pin drop. Then the complaints started up again, but the manager cut them off. He told them they were welcome to stay and eat, but a different server would be taking care of them. A minute later, this massive dude who looked like he moonlighted as a bouncer walked over to their table. The guys took one look at him and suddenly got very quiet. DJ and I made our way back to our table, fighting to keep straight faces. When we sat down, everyone was looking at us with questions in their eyes. Winston asked what we had done, his tone suspicious but curious. DJ said with a smirk that we had just cleared the air, and I added that those guys wouldn't be bothering anyone else tonight. Winston's girlfriend, Lisa, looked worried and asked if we had gotten into a fight or anything. DJ assured her that it was nothing like that and that we had just used our natural talents. Lisa caught on first. Her eyes went wide and she started giggling. She covered her mouth with her hand, trying to stay quiet. She said in disbelief that we hadn't actually done what she thought we did. I just shrugged and winked at her. Pretty soon everyone at the table understood what we'd done, and we were all trying not to laugh too loud. Every time someone made eye contact, we'd start cracking up all over again. Our server came back a few minutes later. She looked like a different person. Her shoulders were relaxed, and she had a genuine smile on her face. She apologized again for all the commotion and asked if everyone was ready to order. Her voice was much lighter now. Winston told her not to worry at all and said we were just glad things had calmed down. We all ordered, making sure to be extra polite and patient with her. When she was writing everything down, DJ spoke up and said we wanted to let her know that we really appreciated how she handled that situation earlier. He added that she did a great job. Her face lit up. She thanked us and said it meant a lot to her. The rest of the night was perfect. The food was just as good as Winston had promised. We joked around, told stories, and had the kind of time you hope for when you're celebrating someone's birthday. Every so often, one of us would look over at the other table. Those guys sat there looking miserable for the rest of their meal, barely talking to each other. When we were getting ready to leave, we stopped by the manager's station on our way out. I told him we just wanted to let him know that our server was fantastic tonight, especially considering what she had to deal with earlier. The manager said he really appreciated us saying that and promised he would make sure she knew. He thanked us again, and we headed out into the parking lot. Winston stopped and turned to DJ and me. He said he didn't know exactly what we had done, but he thanked us for making sure his birthday didn't get ruined by those jerks. DJ said with a grin that's what friends were for, and I added that sometimes you just have to fight fire with air. We all burst out laughing at that. We got in our cars and headed home, still chuckling about the whole thing. It wasn't the quiet birthday dinner we'd planned, but it turned into something way more memorable. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.